Ramona, you've seen all the speeches, you watched the show. What was your favorite speech from this weekend?
You know what? Chris Boshs really touched me with his speech. Not just the theatrical gesture of him giving Pat Riley the ring back. There's a whole story with Pat Riley's rings. They were lost, and then he had them redone. He had them in the bag, and they were too nice and new, so he had to nick them up to make them look like they've been used. So I think the ring that Pat gave Chris was redone. Was one of those redone rings.
Yeah.
But if you have 10 rings like Pat Riley does, that's how you go without, you give somebody a ring, you can be without it for over a decade and then not even realize that he still had it. That's pretty awesome. But I love what Chris Boshs said about his career, where at the age of 31, he gets this blood clot disorder and he just has to stop. And I remember covering this at the time. It was so hard for all of us who knew Chris, who knew how much he loved playing, who he obviously wanted to continue playing, but he had 5 kids. And you have to think about the rest of your life and the way that he has reinvented himself and found meaning in in what he does now. I thought that was really powerful in the way he spoke about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm partial to Paul Pierce. Everybody on the jump knows Paul well. Yeah. He's one of the first guys that I actually covered that went in the Hall of Fame. I covered him with the Brooklyn Nets, and it was really neat to see him be on that stage and get honored that way. But to Ramona's point, Chris Boshs is a guy that, regular fans didn't get a chance to see as much because he played with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, and they took up so much of the spotlight. But for people that covered the league and our jobs, Chris Boshs was such a fascinating guy to talk to because he was always honest. He was always open about what's going on. He talked about the struggles he had adjusting to being the third guy in Miami and everything that went into that. And I think in that speech, in addition to him giving Pat that ring, you really saw the kind of person that Chris was and the really interesting, thoughtful guy that he is. And I thought that really shone through in a way that I think regular fans might not have got a chance to see during the course of his career.
Yeah, no, I agree. The funny thing about all of these Hall of Fame speeches is that everyone deserves to be there. You know that everyone has this unique story that you can make a movie over. You got Ben Wallace. You got Chris Webber that was long overdue. Ben Wallace undrafted. Chris Boshs, who ended up having a medical condition that forced him to retire. So many great deserving individuals in the Hall of Fame. I know, we're gonna get to those lovely ladies, but my thing about Chris Boshs is that it's such a unique story because his career was cut at 31. At 31 years old, he is still in his prime. So to be a 14-time All-Star, to be a 2-time champ, and to just be saying that, hey, you got to walk away. This is over for you. I think to see how he's kind of redefined and found happiness, I think that's something that was really, really special. But we have some other stuff that was probably kind of fixed over and glossed over a little bit. The rift between Ray Allen and the 2008 Celtics is very well documented. But this weekend, Paul Pierce said this: "We're always going to be brothers." Now, that's a big, big statement. Tim, do you sense, you see, this wasn't some long speech. This wasn't any hey, we're going to rekindle this romance. But Tim, do you get the sense that this stalemate between the 2008 Celtics and Ray will kind of end soon?
I certainly hope so, Richard. And this is something that Paul talked about in an article in Sports Illustrated that my pal Chris Mannix wrote last week. And he talked about the fact that at times Kevin Garnett has been, pretty against having this rift come to an end. And some of the other guys involved have been a little standoffish about it. But that Paul Pierce is determined to make this happen. And I think Paul's going to eventually get this done. I mean, that starting 5 from that Boston Celtics team, here in the city of Boston, they're still lauded for having never lost a series together. Obviously Kendrick Perkins famously hurt his knee right before Game 7 of that series of 2010 against the Lakers. The year before, Kevin got hurt, and they just never got a chance to really fully go after a repeat like they did when they were healthy in 2008. And I think at some point you're going to see them all on the court here together in Boston, celebrated. Hopefully Ray's jersey at some point goes up into the rafters. They're doing Kevin Garnett's jersey retirement this year. Maybe that's a moment they can get everybody back there. You saw Ray on the stage with Chris Boshs in Springfield this weekend. It would be really good, I think, and I think will eventually happen that you get that group together and celebrate what is the last championship here in Boston.
One question. Is he on the group text? They have a group text from that team that has been going for years, for decades. It's all you got to do is add them to it. I know it's really hard to add people to a group text.
Let me say,
I don't even know how to do it half the time. I have to start a whole new one.
As a player, let me tell you, like, the group text is sacred. Rule number one in the group text, you don't talk about the group text. And then, like, who is on it? There is no addition to it. It's either you are on or you aren't. And my thing about the whole Ray Allen beef, sometimes players are still just looking for, even myself, we're still looking for some reason to be mad, to be competitive, to be grumpy. Yes, I'm still a grumpy player. But I just think the reason why this isn't dying is because there's probably just, it's probably more fun. We probably won't talk about it nearly as much. If they're all best friends, we'll just move on. So at least this way, you get a little bit more attention.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.